Hello everyone, my name is Carwin Liang, and today I'll be talking to you about the issues of globalization. So with the presentation, I want to quickly go over what is the definition of globalization. What is it? According to John and Kenneth Weil's book, International Business, The Challenges of Globalization, they define the word as a trend of greater economic, cultural, political, and technological interdependence among national institutes and economies. Now, with globalization comes two different factors. One is denationalization that talks about the blurring of barriers across countries, and this is primarily due to the advances in technology such as email communication and also other forms of electronic communication, and also the advances in transportation solutions, such as having, as opposed to having to take a car or traveling overseas with a boat, people are now able to travel overseas by plane, making the commute much shorter and making the barriers much easier to cross. The second factor is called internationalization, that talks about the collaborative effort of different countries working together as far as building a world market and world economy. We have proponents and also opponents of globalization. The proponents of globalization speak to the benefits of globalization, and some of the claims are globalization reduces marketing costs by creating a standard process. Different organizations are able to use same marketing ads, but just translate it to the local language or dub certain TV shows in order to cater to the local population. Second benefit is to create new market opportunities, once again due to the blurring of borders, leveling um, the income streams for domestic and also international trades. Most organizations typically before they globalize have only one source of revenue, that is domestic sales. Now with international revenues, they're able to balance it out a little bit more instead of depending on seasonal revenue. They also argue that by opening to different markets, they're also able to cater to local buyers' needs. They argue that globalization benefits global sustainability, reduces overall production costs by lower labor costs and lower material costs. And also by going overseas, we're able to access and share technical expertise as well as resources that are not available in the home country. Opponents of globalization, there are some labor, ethical, financial, cultural, and also ecological issues that I'll go into more in depth in the next few slides. Labor and ethical issues, um, the opponents of globalization argue that it eliminates jobs in the developing nations. Organizations find that with by going overseas, they're able to take advantage of lower labor costs and lower material costs, and that's quite enticing for the bottom line of organizations. So a lot of our jobs are now being shipped overseas. Second one is lower wages. Once again, due to the standard of living in other countries, we're able to pay workers lower labor costs, and that is something that's very lucrative to organizations in order to cut costs and also increase their revenues. Now, with lower wages also come the issue of exploitation of workers. A great example of this is Abercrombie and Fitch having garment factories on the island of Saipan, which is where I'm from. At that time of the lawsuit against Abercrombie and Fitch, the minimum wage in Saipan was $3.15. The company definitely took advantage of that. Most of the garment factories there had a sweatshop environment. Workers were essentially being paid less than the minimum wage, and they were forced to produce large quantities of material, um, much more than the average worker would produce in factories that are here in the United States. Issue deals with financials. The opponents of globalization argue that there are some wage inequity issues. By going overseas, different standards of living mean different incomes. When with different incomes, the difference between rich and the poor, the gap gets larger and larger. From the employer's perspective, there are also some financial implications with hiring people to work in overseas assignments. There are some costly fringe benefits, not just for the employee, but also for the spouse and our family members. The relocation costs of employees, the availability of corporate housing or temporary housing for the employee, and also just the visa application process can be quite costly. There are some cultural issues with globalization, as argued by some of the opponents. They say that it creates a homogenized culture due to the frequent uses of consumer goods, primarily Western goods. So people will be drinking Coca-Cola and they're constantly exposed to all these Western cultures and Western goods, and that they are forgetting their roots, and essentially that destroys that the culture and also affect the upbringing. And lastly, there are some ecological issues with globalization. Specifically, by globalizing, companies will definitely need to erect more factories overseas, and in doing so, they'll have to take out rainforest, which deals with deforestation. Having more factories result in an increase in carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere, which causes climate changes and also releases a significant amount of pollutants in the air.